Good afternoon. How is everyone today? That's good. My name is Vanessa Weiner, and I serve Chautauqua Institution as marketing manager, and I welcome you here to the Athenaeum Hotel afternoon lecture during the Livable Community Forum here at Chautauqua Institution. This is the third year we've had a forum like this. This is the last year of this multi-year initiative, and I'm very grateful that we have so many people here. As we continue the forum this week, we are pleased to have physicians and professionals from LECOM Health as part of our lecture platform. A college of osteopathic medicine in Erie, Pennsylvania, LECOM Health is comprised of the nation's largest medical college, Mill Creek Community Hospital, and the physician practices of Medical Associates of Erie. This is a highly innovative healthcare and education system that strives to add to the quality of life of our neighbors by bringing healthcare to the community. It is my pleasure to welcome you here, as well as Dr. Garrett Clark to the Athenaeum Hotel. Dr. Clark is a graduate of Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine and recently completed the LECOM Integrative Medicine Fellowship Training Program at Mill Creek Community Hospital in Erie. Integrative medicine physicians provide care for the whole person. Dr. Clark helps patients achieve wellness by combining traditional medicine with complementary treatments such as acupuncture, nutrition planning, and osteopathic manipulative therapy. Today's topic is where do we go now? Advice for staying healthy as you age. Please welcome Dr. Garrett Clark, and we will hold questions until the end. I will go around with a microphone at the completion of the lecture. So welcome Dr. Garrett Clark to the Athenaeum Hotel in Chautauqua.
Thank you. To start off, I'm very, very pleased and honored to be here. Can everyone hear me in the back? Thumbs up? Okay. So, yes, again, very proud to be here at the auspicious Chautauqua Institute. My first time here as a lecturer, but my mother has been taking me here ever since I was a little kid to broaden my cultural horizons. And so, very happy to be here. So we're going to talk today about your health as the way I see it. And I'm just going to review some of our objectives here. We're going to identify factors that contribute to aging, review concepts behind osteopathic medicine and integrative care, address some non-traditional yet scientifically based modalities that we use to treat age-related ailments, and discuss the impact that nutrition and exercise have on overall health. To start though, I'd like you to just bear with me for a little bit. And if you're not familiar with this is a graphic depiction of a Higgs boson. And the Higgs boson was, is a particle physics. And you might say, whoa. I thought, yes, you're in the right lecture. This is not going to be a physics lecture, but to make a point. Physicists are under the search for a unified field theory that would unify the forces of nature, meaning the strong and the weak, nuclear force, gravity, and electromagnetism, into one grand theory of everything. And the reason I bring this up is because I would submit to all of you that I feel that the realm of integrative medicine is healthcare's unified field theory. And we're going to talk in depth about what I do at our clinic and what osteopathic and integrative medicine can offer all of you. And, when I start conversations about this, and my own mother, who's an astute Mensa member, that's the group for really smart people, I first told her I was going to embark on this mission of integrative medicine, and she kind of twerks her head and she says, internal medicine? I thought you're doing that. And no. Integrative medicine. And folks oftentimes wonder, well, what does that mean? And I often get this deer in the headlights kind of look. Put simply, it's congruent with our LECOM axiom, totum personam curamus, which means to treat or cure, ideally, the whole person. And osteopathic medicine and the tenets of osteopathic medicine are also congruent with that philosophy. So it really fits. It fits my training as an osteopathic physician, and it fits what I feel the best optimal healthcare should be. So one of the things integrative medicine is not, it is not meant to supplant traditional medicine. We're not if you need to be on a beta blocker, we're not saying go off of your beta blocker for hypertension. If you're a brittle diabetic, we're not saying you need to go off your insulin pump, okay? But what we are saying is there are some complementary modalities that can really augment your health in a beneficial way, and we encourage that, and such to the point where you may not need certain medications if you can get your total health in order. So part of the problem, as I see it, as to why some folks aren't quite clear is on what integrative medicine is because of the evolution of terms throughout the decades. In the 70s, we had holistic medicine, and then the 1980s ushered in this complementary and alternative medicine. And sometimes when you say complementary and alternative, people are like, okay, what kind of woo-woo is this? What woo-woo stuff is this? Alternative to what? So the 90s ushered in the term integrative medicine, and that's the one that kind of seems to have stuck. And in the future, they're tossing around ideas like health and healing-oriented medicine. I prefer to say that I practice good medicine. You know, that we're in the business of practicing good medicine. And if you want to label it integrative medicine, that's what we're going to label it. The National Institutes of Health have actually defined integrative medicine in terms of scientifically based modalities that may not be traditional but yet scientifically based versus the alternative. When we say alternative medicine, sometimes we're not sure what we're talking about. So to find health should be the object of the doctor. Anyone can find disease. And this is a quote from our patriarch, Andrew Taylor Still, the founder of osteopathy. And I think it really hits home because it's so very true. And like I already said, that philosophy is really congruent with osteopathy and integrative care. And this is a picture of Andrew Taylor Still, deep in contemplation, thinking about, I don't know what, maybe bones. So LECOM has really pioneered this whole concept of whole health care, and really I feel has taken the concept of treating the whole person and applied that throughout its branch campuses all over the country, and not only in just the fields of medicine, but also in the fields of pharmacy, as well as our new dental school. So I think that we are unique, not only that we're the largest medical school in the country, but also because we're really offering and really adhering to those integrative and osteopathic roots and principles. So this is a very encompassing field, okay? We like to center on the ellipse, the mind, body, and the spirit, but sometimes when we do that, it's kind of it's not quite clear. Mind, body, spirit. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means, you might have a fracture, but maybe you were upset that night. Maybe there's something going on in your life. Maybe you're upset because you just got a cancer diagnosis. Who knows? And you got mad and hit the wall. I mean, there's the idea of taking the entire person into account. And let's face it, as an internist in a 10, 15-minute office visit, we really don't have time to address all of these needs, and that's one of the unique things that I like about our practice is that we are afforded the ability to really address a patient's needs totally and completely. My mentor, Dr. Coppola, who's lectured here in the past, and many other events, likes to say that folks are like onions, and we're just peeling back the onion layers, to try to get to the root of the problem. So along this osteopathic wheel, we have surgery. We have OMT, which I'm going to explain that in a minute. It's osteopathic medical treatment, or OMM, osteopathic manual medicine. That's an integral part of what we do. We also focus on nutrition, the mind-body connection, and everything else that encompasses traditional medicine. And why do we do this? Well, Back in 2002, the CDC did a survey, and they found that 62% of Americans were using alternative treatment methods. And then they went back in 2007 again, and they looked, and they included the children in this study, and found that almost 12% of children use these modalities. So it behooves us as physicians to at least be knowledgeable about this, because folks are using them, and whether that's due to they're not satisfied with their traditional care, or whether that's for some other reasons, which I'll get into in a minute. The point being is, one of the other things they found was that focusing on these types of things actually encourages more time in prevention on disease. And really, what we're trying to do in our traditional medicine scope today is to prevent disease. That's one of the pillars that we're trying to do. We want to catch your diabetes before you get diabetes. We want to have your health such that you don't develop hypertension, and so on. So along the same vein of the alternative, we kind of get into this 2 a.m. Infomercial with all the snake oils that are out there. And first and foremost, I'm a scientist, and I like to, I don't discount things, but I like to know that they work. And of course, our oath is to first do no harm, right? So, anytime someone says that, snake oil cures all, or I love this one down here, ozone paper, for the immediate relief and subsequent cure of, and then insert your disease, okay? So there's, we're quick to say in our clinic, there's no panacea, there's no magic, but believe me, if there was a magic pill or a magic bullet, I would be using it, and I would freely give it to all of you. And I particularly like this one here. This is apropos for the times, the Eye of Newt, but is it gluten-free, So, these are the types of things that we want to avoid. Maybe there is an ozone tablet that's working, and it shows great evidence-based medicine that this works and that there's good science behind it. I haven't seen that yet. And so, we'll have folks come in with bags and bags. They won't take their metformin for diabetes, but they'll take all these supplements, and some of them are prudent to take. Vitamin D, or maybe glucosamine, chondroitin, if that works for you in certain subsets of populations, that works. But then they'll have all these other supplements, and why are you on this? I don't know. Why are you on this? Oh yeah, somebody told me that was great for, yeah. Well, okay, why are you on this? I don't know, what's that again? And so it becomes a battle to sift through fact and fiction and what works and what doesn't work. So I'd like to get into a little bit about, before we can help you to age well, it's good to know why we age. And so this is a multifaceted problem or issue. I shouldn't say problem, we all age. From the moment we're conceived till we die, we're aging. And then even after death, we're still aging, right? So what I mean to talk about here is not chronologic age, but physiologic age. And so there's nothing we can do to stop time, at least, unless there's a time traveler in the audience here. I don't know how to do that. So, but what I can do is try to give you tips on how to age well. First and foremost, genetics plays a huge role. And then these other things down here, lack of physical activity, poor diet, environmental factors. I don't think it's any surprise that, drinking excessively or smoking or doing other types of illicit activities puts wear and tear on your body, okay? And this is a nice depiction of what I was just talking about in the bullets, but also, it adds in that spectrum of social activity and productive pursuits. Well, what's that? Keep your mind sharp. It's a good goal to stay active in whatever type of venue interests you. If that's playing shuffleboard, if that's, getting together, on the weekends and doing crossword puzzles with your buddies, but to stay socially and intellectually active is also huge in staying young and living well. Not to sound cliche, but if you don't use it, you lose it. So, as far as the environmental factors, and I know this slide looks kind of scary and busy, but most of us have heard of this concept called free radicals, and all free radicals are, the outer electron valence are trying to scourge up other electrons, and they steal them from other molecules, and when that happens, it can cause damage, cellular damage. And so this is just a depiction of where, how we're being bombarded from all these different things. So if we can minimize that risk, that can help you live longer as well. Excessive UV light, excessive sunlight, of course we want you to have some sun, that's not good either to have no sun, but, we don't want you to develop melanoma. Ionizing radiation, of course, smoking, air pollution and environmental toxins, we'll talk a little bit about later. The metabolism issue, are you eating donuts for breakfast, Cheetos for lunch and then a sensible dinner, that's all gonna wear or tear on your body. From a genetic standpoint, there's this concept of telomeres. Telomeres are like bookends or end caps on our chromosomes. And scientists feel that, they can look at these telomeres and say, well, I could tell about how old the patient is, and based on their age, also how healthy the patient is and how long the person might live. So I like to segue into one of the medical mysteries, and looking out at the audience, I'm just going to define, if nobody knows who Ozzy Osbourne is, there's been a lot of, he's quite famous, so I'm hoping most of you know that Ozzy Osbourne is one of the famous rock vocalists of the 20th and 21st century. And this guy has, and no offense to Ozzy, I mean, I used to really dig his music, but this guy has, still do, this guy has punished his body. I mean, punished his body with, between the alcohol, and he freely admits it, between the drugs and the alcohol. I mean, medical science is truly curious and wants to study his genome because they're like, how is this guy still living? How is it even possible? And so I put this in there to add some levity to the talk, but also to point out that genetics plays a huge role. So what we do at our clinic as far as integrative modalities to help folks along with their aging and aging well is so multifaceted that I really literally could spend an hour probably on each one of these topics and then some. So this is just to kind of give you an overview, okay? And hopefully spark some interest in what we do. Some of the main things we do are, as this concept I alluded to earlier in the talk, is OMT or OMM, that's Osteopathic Manual Medicine. And that's what we do with our hands to free up restrictions and relieve pain in many instances. And one of the things we quite often are asked, for those who aren't familiar with the field, is, so are you like a bone doctor? Or you crack my back? And yes, so we call that HVLA, high velocity, low amplitude technique, and we do that, but that's only a very small piece of the gestalt of techniques that what we get into. And we're going to talk a little bit today about acupuncture, some of the other things, some movement therapies, Tai Chi, yoga, these types of things that we offer at the clinic or suggest. We have a certified yoga instructor at our clinic, and we have a physician-driven yoga therapy, restorative yoga class. And then I'm going to get into some of the injection therapies and also proper diet, mind, body, all that. So, like I said, I could literally talk for a whole hour just on osteopathic principles. Picture's worth 1,000 words, so I hope this will suffice for now in lieu of an actual demonstration. But these are the types of things that we do in the office. Literally every day, in very rare circumstances, will a patient not get this type of treatment. Now, acupuncture is another treatment modality that we use. And some folks are very, very, very in tune. I have folks that come just for acupuncture and nothing else. They're very in tune with this. And it's surprising in Erie, Pennsylvania. If I was out in California, I might say, okay, that fits. But I was surprised to find how many of our patients come for just an acupuncture treatment. From the Latin, acupuncture means exactly what it says. You're getting punctured with a needle, okay? And the concept dates back centuries to ancient China, and it's geared towards freeing up restrictions, pain, the flow of qi through this kind of, in our Western mindset, an ill-defined meridian system. However, it is quite well defined by the Chinese. And By ill-defined, I mean that our Western science hasn't been able to nail down exactly how they came up with these lines, these meridian lines and this flow of chi, because it's not like the vascular system, it's not like the lymphatic system, where you can dissect somebody and map all this out. The ancient Chinese figured this out centuries ago, and it still seems to anecdotally work to this day with all these various meridian points. And we're very privileged to have Dr. Bo Zhao, who's a trained physician from China, and she's joined our group into the Integrative Medicine Fellowship, and she offers just a unique blend of traditional and non-traditional ideas. So people often ask me, well, how did they discover this complex myriad of meridian systems? And I'm quick to say, I'm not saying it was aliens, but maybe it was aliens. It's not aliens, okay? This is I'm a fan of this guy. He's on the History Channel's Ancient Alien series. So, just a joke. So this is kind of what the treatments look like. Just a quick example of, and folks ask, well, does it hurt? Does it hurt? I'll put a needle in, one of my meridians in my arm and just show them, oh, see, here it is. And, there is a small ache. We call that the day chi, which is normal, but typically that subsides and people find it to be a really relaxing and beneficial treatment. And there's some actual science, and don't worry, I'm not going to go through this complex biochemistry. It's just meant to illustrate. This comes from the American Journal of Physiology, Endocrinology, and Metabolism. So not really Mad Magazine here. There's actual science. There's actual science behind it that shows, this, in this case, I believe this is referencing polycystic ovarian syndrome and pain related to that, but this is stimulation of the needles causing neuropeptide release and the influence in the peripheral nerve terminals. I know these are big fancy words, but neuropeptide simply means peptide is a protein. Neuropeptide is just simply the proteins that the neurons use to communicate with each other. So there's clear data to support some of the usage of this acupuncture treatment. It's my Marco Rubio moment. So this is just a graphic depiction of what these meridian lines look like. And during my course, I was trained at the Helms Institute, which is a very vigorous course for physicians, very well done. And I feel well trained. And they'll literally draw on you, and we'll memorize a large portion of these points. Qigong is another type of movement therapy. Qigong is not something we offer directly in our office. It's kind of related to Tai Chi, not quite the same thing, but it's that slow, movement stuff that is, sometimes seen in China. They're doing this in the mornings to, balance their system and become one with things. And it focuses on ancient Taoist philosophy. There's the forces of heaven and earth and the spirit, and they call these the three powers. And I just thought it was really interesting to think of the three powers almost like those forces of nature and how we want to harmonize. I mean, of course, this is devoid of any scientific value. I'm just kind of drawing an interesting correlate in my mind. So, this director of Tai Chi and mind-body research at Harvard looked at this, and there's really convincing evidence that this type of movement therapy really is helping people gain healthier, happier lives. This, in combination with yoga therapy and some of the other movement therapies, there's really a lot of scientific evidence to support these things. Some of the benefits of yoga that have been studied: weight loss, decreased stress and anxiety, clearly strengthening and flexibility. If you're doing yoga, you're gonna get to become more limber and flexible. But it's been shown to lower blood pressure, improve posture, mental clarity, and so many others. So the more pronounced form, I guess you'd say, of yoga that we practice here in the West is Hatha yoga, to my understanding. But there's so many different types of yoga. And if you get right down to the root of yoga, it's geared towards seeking enlightenment. And I've had a few of my patients who have come to me who are Christian or specifically Roman Catholic. And I'm a Roman Catholic as well. and they start, hey, can I do this stuff? This is kind of like, So there is a misnomer that by practicing yoga, you're somehow dabbling with the occult or false gods or whatnot. And I do believe the Catholic Church put out a paper on it and said basically, and of course can't remember exactly the verbiage, but basically they said, listen, if you're doing yoga just for simply the sake of physical fitness, then that's okay. Obviously, if you're Hindu or whatever, then that doesn't matter. But I always go to this position of Pope John Paul kneeling and then this other lady kneeling in the garden. I mean, so what's your intention? So if you're Christian or Roman Catholic, yes, you can do yoga. I've had a lot of patients say, well, are you sure? And I'm pretty sure, as long as you're not, in your mind thinking of different intention. And this is the example I always use. It's like, these are just movement therapies to help you. So maybe, it's Tai Chi, this yoga, maybe you're a cattle rancher for Texas and this stuff is too uptown for you. I mean, maybe you're just like, what? So I often tell my patients, listen, you don't have to get into these other things. I mean, we'd like you to, but maybe that doesn't fit you. Maybe you don't want to, maybe you're not interested in that kind of thing. You can always do something. Get out and run. Doc, my knees I'm 70 years old, I got osteoarthritis. Okay, go for a walk. I fractured my ankle. Okay, well, you can get into the aqua, you can get into the pool. I'm allergic to chlorine. There's chair exercises you can do. There's always something that can be done to help you with movement therapy. And this doesn't really apply to this talk, but I like this saying. This is from a Wing Chun master who taught Bruce Lee, and Wing Chun is a form of martial art, and he's famous for saying, the only two requirements for Wing Chun training is one, that you do it, and the other is that you continue to do it. And I really like that because I find it applies to so many things in life, and especially when it comes to gleaning, a better paradigm of health. I really think that the old cliche of, the first step of 1,000, or the first journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. I mean, it's kind of like that. So just keep on doing it, keep on stepping. Everybody okay? Okay. Am I talking too fast? Okay. So I'd like to segue into this realm of regenerative biomedicine. These are injection therapies that we utilize in the office, some of which insurances will pay for, others that are considered still experimental, even though they've been around for like 50 years. Oftentimes folks are having trouble. They're having trouble with wear and tear. They're having trouble with movement. And obviously, like I just said, the goal is movement, right? So how can we help facilitate that? If it's not with the acupuncture, the next step may be injection therapies. And this is typically done before surgery, okay? This is something that folks who don't want to have surgery come to us for. So this picture here is a picture of a knee. And on your left, this is what a normal knee should look like. Again, it's a cartoon, but I'll show you some real pictures in a minute. And then on the right here, you have, worn, eroded cartilage from wear and tear and years of, degeneration or contact sports. Osteophytes. Osteophytes are just fancy doctor words for, bone spurs, okay? And then you have, over here is the nourishing synovial fluid. Synovial fluid is like the lubrication. It's like the car engine oil. That's what keeps things lubricated and moving. And over here on the right, you see this low concentration of hyaluronic acid. That's the business end of the synovial fluid that keeps things nice and limber and going smoothly. So if you're low on that, we replace that with injection therapies. And this is something that insurance does pay for typically. Medicare, Medicaid, they pay for these types of things, and most private insurers. And what we do is we'll take, once we get your insurance's permission, we'll set up a week for 3 weeks, one injection in the involved knee or knees once a week for 3 weeks. And insurances will pay for that, I think, pretty much every 6 months you can get this done, as long as it shows benefit and it's prudent to do so. Another type of injection therapy is something called prolotherapy. Prolotherapy refers to proliferate therapy. Prolotherapy has been around, actually, the concept, and has been around for, I think, over 50 years. Folks like famous sports players are getting this procedure done. However, most insurances will not pay for this because they still consider it experimental. What it involves is a hyperosmolar type of, basically that's sugar water. We use dextrose and lidocaine for anesthesia, and we administer that to the tendons where they connect to the bone in the weakened detachments. We call that the entheses, okay? And we pepper that in these microfenestrating motions with the needle and the prolotherapy solution. And you might say, okay, what's that do? So basically what that does is that recruits your body's own cells, known as fibroblasts, to come down and lay in new collagen deposition at the site of injury where we're injecting. And by doing so, that helps to strengthen the attachment, and that provides pain relief. And so we'll do this typically, every 6 weeks or so we usually say give us 3 to 5 sessions to see if that helps the patient. And I can tell you that in the office, I can't give you precise numbers, but we're in the 80s, 90%. I mean, this is helping a lot of our patients. So on the, I tend to not like, before and afters. It reminds me of that Hydroxycut commercial, with the weight loss. But this proves a point here. Before, this is knee before prolotherapy, and over here you can see the joint collapse, the spaces collapse. This is after prolotherapy sessions and the regeneration of that joint space quite nicely. This is another depiction of a hip. You can see the total devoid joint space up here at the superior end, and then a nice regaining of that. So we do this in all parts of the body, not just knees, not just hips, but this is just kind of to show the benefits that we have. And our former Surgeon General swore by it. I mean, he was a big proponent of prolotherapy. He says, my intractable pain was not intractable, and I was remarkably improved to the point where my pain ceased to be a problem. And that's really our goal. And again, there's no panacea. Sometimes this does not help folks. Sometimes they're still in pain, and you may need surgery, So platelet-rich plasma, this is another injection modality that we use. We usually do these things in steps. We'll start with the hyperosmolar prolotherapy solution, and then if folks have the desire to go further, we'll try this platelet-rich plasma. And you might say, well, okay, what's that about? Well, our own body's platelets have growth factors which helps stimulate healing. And so the idea is, and bear with me here, we draw your autologous blood, your own blood, take it in a centrifuge, which we have in the office, to spin that down. We extract the platelet-rich plasma, and then we inject it into the injured site. And although because of the consistency of the plasma, sometimes those injections hurt directly after the procedure, may hurt a little more, patients end up noticing better relief. So where's the data, where's the studies? I mean, that's what I always ask, and that's what some of my patients ask me. And this is still an evolving field, but there is some, again, we're not taking this out of the comic strip from Mr. Boffa or nothing. This is American Journal of Sports Medicine. And so in 2012, they did a systematic review of meta-analysis of 17 trials with various injection therapies, and they found that the prolotherapy and the hyaluronic acid were indeed better at placebo when treating lateral epicondylitis. Or epicondylosis, that's your lateral epicondyle of your elbow. So they were just looking at elbows. Candidly, the data on lower back pain is still evolving, but we do lower back injections, sacroiliac joint injections, things of that nature, because we found that it helps people. So I'm going to segue now into nutrition. This is what I had for lunch. I didn't even eat lunch. So obviously this is meant as a joke, but not unlike a large part of our American diet. To me, nutrition is, again, not to sound cliche, you truly are what you eat. And in my opinion, our Western diet, we're at a crisis with the type of nutrition that we are ingesting, okay? So I'm going to talk a little bit about this. one of the things that my patients ask me is, should I supplement? I'm eating fruits and vegetables. Do I need to supplement? And my answer to that is, well, it depends. It depends on where you're getting those fruits and vegetables from. Clearly, if your diet is sausage McMuffin for breakfast, Starbucks coffee, and I'm guilty of that. Starbucks coffee and ham sandwich for lunch, and then God knows what TV dinner for dinner. Then yeah, you probably need to supplement because you're eating all processed, definitely I would say GMO, genetically modified foods, and you're not getting the nutrients you need. We got a crisis of vitamin D deficiency in our region, in our neck of the woods, northwestern Pennsylvania. That's a combination of not enough sunlight and not good food sources. So the University of Texas Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry back in 2004 looked at pharmacologic data from the 1950s, and then they looked at the data from 1999. And what they were looking at is a variety of fruits and vegetables for their nutrient content, okay? And what they found was quite remarkable. Quote, reliable declines in the amount of protein, calcium, phosphorus, B complex vitamins, vitamin C over the past half century. And the reason they found for this is because of our agricultural practices, the way we're farming now. And the goal is typically to mass produce, which is a lofty, we don't want people starving, right? So we want to have enough food for everybody. But what's happening is, based on the agricultural practices and the GMO and the pesticides that are sprayed, they're all focused on everything other than nutrition, the nutritional value of the food. My I don't want to say my buddy, but the poor Dr. Oz has come under fire for his stance on these genetically modified organisms. And the reason being is there's still controversy surrounding this issue. And Dr. Oz took a position which I happen to agree with. I don't agree with everything Dr. Oz says. I don't agree with everything anybody says, I don't think. But I am with him on this issue. And even McDonald's, who is a huge, you go to McDonald's, you're eating genetically modified food, I can tell you. And even they're telling their employees to avoid burgers and fries. It's risky for your health. So that kind of says something. So, and I'm not, I know I'm sounding like I'm picking on McDonald's. Listen, this is ubiquitous throughout the fast food industry and beyond. But I'm using McDonald's because when you think fast food, what do you think? You think McDonald's, right? If I said, let's go to the health food store, we're not going to McDonald's, right? I don't know. So, biggest U.S. ad spending by a restaurant with $988 million, and this is probably old data, more people recognize the Golden Arches than the Christian Cross around the world, worldwide. It's the largest toy manufacturer. McDonald's could, if they wanted to, give one Happy Meal toy to every single child in the world today. And incidentally, along that fact, more than a third of our children in America are either overweight or obese. And so, they entice with the Happy Meals, and the parents get sucked in, and, it becomes a problem. Southampton University researchers looked at some of the additives that are in their food, and it's not just McDonald's, but just in general. But they looked at McDonald's and found links to hyperactivity and decreased concentration that may be linked. And again, I'm not trying to bash any one industry. I'm just saying that these things need to be studied if we're looking for optimal health. And it boils down to, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Ever since I was a kid, I still have all my Star Wars toys. And so I love this quote from Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's leading our heroes into rescuing the princess, and the character Han Solo here, he's like the swashbuckler pirate guy, and he's like, "Oh, you old fool, I knew you were going to get us into this." And Obi-Wan says, "Well, who's the more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows him?" And I think that is so apropos with regard to, I'm up here, fast food, processed food. Am I buying that stuff? I mean, McDonald's is doing what McDonald's does. They're trying to make a profit, and Wendy's and Burger King and all these other places. You know, if there wasn't a demand for this type of food, if people weren't going there, they wouldn't be doing this. And in fact, you know, I think McDonald's is taking notice. And if you've been around since, you know, McDonald's has started this trend on, you know, the healthy McDonald's. You know, they got the salad and they got the apples. You know, instead of fries, you can get apples. And of course, my kids want fries. You know, but so as a leading consumer of GMOs, we are not quite sure on the effects, and I can't stress that I think that there needs to be more prospective studies looking at this, because I feel that this is our next cigarette thing. This is our next cancer-driven thing. We just, in my opinion, we just don't have enough data. What happens is that, you know, the GMOs, they're geared to make crops more resistant to pesticides quite oftentimes, and in doing so, we're you know, there's a plethora of data out there showing that there's signs of end organ damage, gastrointestinal immune things, allergies, and it's just something that I think needs to be put the brakes on. The Congress just last month passed a bill that they're not even mandating that companies label GMOs anymore, which I think is you know, is a travesty. We should at least have the choice. The other thing is they have the potential to contaminate forever. If you have a non-GMO farmer over here and a GMO farmer over here, the wind blows, they cross-contaminate, and we don't know what that does. We really don't know what that does. And you know, my detractors will say, well, come on. I mean, this stuff's been around since, you know, for 30 or more years, and we've been putting it in our food system, and you know, people would have 3 heads by now if it was so bad. Well, you know, I would argue that there is some data to show that, you know, we have an uptick in immune problems, an uptick in gastrointestinal disease like celiac and, you know, acid reflux disease and all these things. Can you prove causality? No, not right now, perhaps, but I do think we should not ignore the link. So the American Academy of Environmental Medicine called for an immediate moratorium on these genetically modified foods, saying that they call us, you know, so basically I'm saying I'm not alone. I mean, there are other people out here, they pose a serious health risk. And they concluded that there is more than a casual association between these GMO foods and adverse health effects, including, you know, aging and all the things I just mentioned. So I like to point out that these biotech companies, and I'm not saying that they have a nefarious bent to them, but I'm saying that, you know, they once also told us that things like DDT were safe and Agent Orange was safe. And, you know, ask anybody who's a veteran at the VA, you know, Agent Orange clinic to tell you that, oh yeah, Agent Orange is safe. It was safe, yeah, no problem, you know. So this is an ad from, you know, decades ago. DDT is good for me. Not so much. So this is one of my heroes. It's my grandfather. So we had him for 98 years, and this is one of his smaller gardens. I mean, if you pan out, he had like, you know, acres of fresh food, and this was non-GMO. I don't know what he was spraying it with, though. I must confess, he had some World War II can sprayer. I wasn't, you know. So, but I'm just saying, I grew up with this, and so to me, it's quite natural to, you know, he's the patriarch of, you know, raised almost 3 generations, and we ate well, and, you know, we went to the store for, you know, steak, you know. Here's me and my sister. Now, you know, you can start to see a little wear down here on the squash. You know, it's starting to rot, but that's a natural finding, you know. My detractors, the guys in the GMO business will say, well, hey, we could stop that. We could stop that. It'd be good. Stay fresh on the truck and get out to you, and, you know. But is it really, you know? This is from the Journal of Interdisciplinary Toxicology, and what they did was they looked at glyphosate. Glyphosate's the business end of Roundup. Things like Roundup, you know, toxic herbicide. And they looked at data going back to 1990, and then they compared that, this here ends in 2010, and they looked at the incidence of celiac disease. And, you know, again, it all boils down to that, well, we can't prove causality. And I say, okay, yeah, maybe it is space dust from the planet Tralfamadore, and that's what's causing all the celiac disease. I don't know. And full disclosure, you know, I'm not sure if the Journal of Interdisciplinary Toxicology is peer reviewed. It's a decent journal. But what my point is there is definitely some indication that we should look at this much more deeply than we are. And certainly we should know whether we're eating GMO or not. So full disclosure here, this was just published in Forbes, I think last year, and you know, the results are in, GMOs are safe, nothing to see here. There's a plethora of physicians like myself who say, no, we don't buy that. And a lot of this data that they looked at was observational. Okay, so you know they look at, you know, they go back and they look at all the stuff that's been done, but there's been relatively few prospective trials and importantly, third-party independent trials. So, you know, this is not photoshopped. This is not photoshopped. This is, you know, something that I guess I'm putting out there because we haven't always had it right either. You know, the physician takes an oath to do no harm, but I mean, sometimes we're wrong, and I think we have to be willing to admit that. And these ads just kind of point to that fact. I love this here. You can almost hear the voiceover. I'm going to be 100 years old, and the doctor, in fact, you will, Susie, if you just keep smoking Camel. I mean, I'm thinking no, you know. So it's an interesting, I hope this will coalesce here in a minute. It is interesting that going back to King James, 1604. Now, King James didn't say, "Oh, this is causing lung cancer," you know, but he's saying, "I'm seeing some health consequences from the tobacco." And then our first reported case of tobacco in the medical literature suggests tobacco and the lung cancer link back in 1912. It wasn't until the 1920s that we had an officially published link to lung cancer. And the Surgeon General didn't tell the mass populace until 1964. That's 3 centuries of folks saying, I don't know about smoking over here. I don't know about this tobacco stuff. Do we really want to wait 3 centuries for the GMO question to be resolved? GMOs may be the next, miracle food. But right now, my stance is go imbibe them with caution. These are partial or total bans on GMOs in other countries. Notice we're nowhere on this list. Saudi Arabia, New Zealand, Portugal, Egypt. None of these folks want GMOs. So, the proof is in the pudding or in the Burger King Burger Whopper. And so what I challenge all of you to do, the only time I will suggest that you go to a fast food restaurant is to take the Dr. Clark Tomato Challenge. And what is that? Well, I'd like you to go and order yourself a nice big Whopper with cheese, make sure it has tomato. Take out that tomato and hose off all the special sauce and junk that's on it. And have ready a nice, farmer's market, non-hybrid, non-GMO tomato ready for you at your disposal, and eat the fast food tomato and really chew on it and let it sit in there and taste it. And I'll bet you dimes to donuts that it will taste like nothing. It'll taste like, green styrofoam or something. And then take that other naturally grown tomato and taste it. And I can tell you will notice the difference because I've done it. Just a little experiment. And so one of the things that the GMO proponents will say is like, listen, we got to feed the world. And I'm all for that. I'm just suggesting that there may be better ways to do that. One of the things, the Flavor Savor tomato was ushered in, has since been pulled out of the market, but these gene sliced tomatoes are geared to last the drive, last the truck drive and the shipment. So what they do is they inject genetic modification to allow it to not rot. It's just not natural. I mean, over here is what a tomato looks like in 45 days. That's a normal process. Over here is the genetically modified tomato. You wouldn't even know it. It looks brand new and fresh. And so another thing that they do is they genetically modify them so that their seeds won't reproduce. Well, why do they do that? Well, because they want you to buy more seeds. And I just think that, are we really concerned with profit, or are we really concerned with health? When I say that, sometimes us physicians, we haven't gotten it right, we try, but as data evolves and as studies evolve, then we need to change our way of thinking. In 1992, which wasn't all that long ago, we see here that, bread and rice and these things were at the base of the FDA-approved food pyramid. This has since evolved to, now that we have an obesity epidemic and we know that, filling yourselves with carbs, it probably isn't the best idea. We want to strive for a more sensible platform with fruits and vegetables as the base. And I'm happy to say that the FDA finally removed smokes from the food pyramid. It's a joke. They never had smokes on the food pyramid. So I had to put that in. I was laughing. So this is the food pyramid that we like to advocate for. This is the Dr. Andrew Weil's anti-inflammatory food pyramid, and we really take stock in advocating this for our patients in our clinic, because the base is the anti-inflammatory fruits and vegetables, good antioxidants, and if you have that as your primary diet, we find that, believe it or not, in a consistent basis can really relieve some of your pain, because a lot of pain is due to inflammation. And then, we add in things as we go, and you'll notice that supplements is included in this because of the aforementioned nutrient weak foods that we may be eating. And there's some other things. Obviously, you have to take in consideration, do you have a fish or seafood allergy? Do you have a nut allergy? My son, he's got anaphylaxis. He can't have this. But if you can, we add these things in, these healthy herbs and spices, things like turmeric, cooking with turmeric and taking turmeric supplements, great for inflammation. Ginger, good for, a natural remedy for nausea. If you don't want to take, the over-the-counter stuff or prescription stuff for nausea, try some ginger root. So basically, to wrap it up, and I appreciate your interest and your patience and everything, there's a lot of scientifically based treatment options that we offer in our clinic to help you with a variety of ailments. I recommend that you check with your doctor before you supplement anything. For folks who are on Coumadin or certain other medications, supplements do. Oftentimes patients will think, oh well, it's natural, it's a vitamin, it's a supplement, I can just take what I want. No, check with your doctor, because you can go toxic on some of these vitamins, believe it or not, especially the fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin D, vitamin A, vitamin K, vitamin E. These are all fat-soluble, and of course we don't want you to, first do no harm, is what we say. So always check. If possible, grow your own non-hybrid, non-GMO foods. Even a little garden will do two things. You'll be eating nutritiously, and you can buy seeds all over the place now that are non-hybrid, non-GMO, but also you're out there working, you're tilling the soil, you're getting exercise. So if you have the ability to do that, we recommend you do that. Exercise, movement therapy, these are all things that will extend your life and make you feel better. And I have a little affinity for Einstein, in case you haven't noticed, and when the solution is simple, God is answering. So, from somebody who wasn't too dumb. If we have time, do we have time? Okay. So I just want to, I put this was what I alluded to earlier. One of my colleagues sent me to this, and I just got to it this morning. I mean, this is hot off the press, so to speak. Last month, the U.S. House of Representatives approved that bill prohibiting states from passing laws that call for mandatory labeling of foods containing genetically modified organisms. So I'm very proud to have colleagues. This isn't just me saying these things. I have colleagues. One of them I quote here: "Science has never concluded that GMOs are safe. In fact, there is substantial evidence in scientific literature for multiple animal studies that demonstrate significant immune dysregulation, lipid irregularities, signaling abnormalities, etc. Pesticides are used in greater amounts on GMO crops, and as a result, 64 nations have allowed or required GMO labeling. And he goes on to say, and I know this is all in here, but this is from the director of allergy and environmental medicine in Michigan. So this is an internist who says, the jury is still out on GMOs. We need to develop more research to really ask the hard questions about how GMOs affect our health. I hope researchers can provide evidence-based, non-biased studies which shows physicians that diet is really important component to anyone's health. And that's really what I'm advocating for here. And I wish you all a happy and healthy life and blessings. Any questions?
Thank you very much. No, I did. Thank you very much. I don't think this is working, but...
She's working on it.
Okay, there it goes. I am not familiar so much with osteopathic medicine, and I wondered if, in your experience, would it help treat sciatic nerve syndrome?
Yes, a very good question, and I apologize. Her question is, I'm not familiar with osteopathic medicine. I guess I should have done a better job in explaining that, but osteopathic medicine focuses, we have some tenets, that we focus on the whole person, that the person has the innate ability to heal themselves, and oftentimes these techniques that we use manipulative-wise helps speed that along. And we differ from chiropractors because, first of all, we are fully licensed physicians and surgeons. I'm an internist, but during my medical school training, I learned these techniques to help free up restrictions and improve pain patterns, okay? So again, it's a modality of hands-on treatment. We use a lot of soft tissue manipulation, something we call muscle energy, where we take you into your restriction barriers and work with you that way. And there are those bone, people say, oh, you can crack my back. We do a little bit of that, but candidly not too much. I mean, we have all these tools in our arsenal.
Thank you.
Yes, can you just tell me, with the high incidence of osteoarthritis, particularly in women, in the basal thumb joint, do you inject those?
We do.
You do?
We do.
What kind of success?
Again, and I'm quick to say I probably should. Again, I just finished my fellowship, so this would be a great study to do. I could just, relate to my own experience, and if I had to ballpark it, first of all, people are coming back and paying cash. And our prices are very reasonable, but insurance isn't paying for this type of treatment. And so I would say, if I had to put a percentage on it, I would say at least 80 to 85% success rate after our 3 to 5 sessions.
You using Prolo or the hyaluronic?
That's with Prolo. By and large, the primary bioregenerative modality we use is Prolotherapy, because that's the cheapest, and candidly, we see good success with it. That being said, sometimes we have some treatment failures, and we will go on to PRP or even autologous blood, which I really didn't get into. But yes, that's primarily with Prolotherapy.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I would just like to make a comment about cigarettes.
Yes.
Sound like it was so recent. Oh, we didn't know cigarettes were that bad. Back in the 20s, and maybe even as far as World War I, they labeled cigarettes as coffin nails.
Yeah.
They're called coffin nails.
Yeah.
And the other thing about cigarettes during World War II, and my mother, who was never smoked in her life, she sent money because full-page ads in magazines like, I'm not sure about Life, but Look magazine.
Oh, yeah.
Support the boys, cigarettes for the boys.
Oh, yeah.
And she would contribute to that.
Great propaganda. Yeah. Thank you.
So you spoke about frozen foods. Are you saying frozen foods are a healthy alternative when you can't get local vegetables and fruits? And also, can you comment on canned food?
I'm sorry, did you say frozen? Did I mention frozen foods? Pardon me?
I think you were talking about TV dinners.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
I'm not talking about TV dinners.
No, but you're saying frozen food in general. Just to give you an idea, 90% of all the corn and soy grown in the United States, up to 90% is said to be genetically modified. So if you're purchasing frozen corn, bagged corn that I like to use for ice packs and things. But if you're buying it to eat it, it's probably GMO. And you'll never know, so I'd hedge my bets on statistical probabilities, but you'll never really know because it looks like Congress is not going to have them label it. So
what's the alternative?
The alternative is to grow your own.
When it's not in season?
Yeah, I mean, my grandmother was a canner. I mean, I know isn't it frustrating? So I hear you. Unfortunately, I can't offer you any alternatives other than grow your own, can your food, buy another freezer. I mean, I'm joking, partially being in jest, but yeah, it's a dilemma.
But I think she was also interested in whether frozen food and canned food, when it comes to nutritional content,
Yeah, I
generally.
think frozen is better. Thank you for that. I think frozen food, and just in generalities, not even talking the GMO piece. I think the frozen food. I think. Can you hear me now? Okay. I think that in general, frozen foods are more nutritious, have higher nutritional content because they're not processed.
Can you say more about soy and the controversy around its effect on estrogen levels, and what's your position on soy?
Again, yes, thank you for the question. Good question. Again, my position is not does not diverge from my position on the other things, which is avoid it. One of the problems is there's corn or soy in virtually anything we buy processed, and it's a real dilemma because although we have no direct causal link, we are seeing an uptick in a whole host of gastrointestinal disorders. And avoidance, I usually would advocate for a dietary holiday. As physicians, sometimes we'll do what's called a drug holiday, where we'll take the drug back and see how the patient does. The best way to circumvent the whole issue with the soy is to do, if possible, and it's very hard to do, is do a soy holiday where you're not ingesting that and see what your symptoms are like. Does that kind of answer your question?
One of the issues you haven't touched on at all is how to cook. And I do a lot of that. And how to cook naturally and not layer your food with extraneous calories and sauces. I think modern day society has a tendency to eat out at good restaurants, which is probably a bad idea because the fat content and associated other factors, even though the meat products, if you do that, or the fish products, they're somewhat tampered with it sometimes. So I would encourage people to understand how to cook at home using a specific, very easy approach is steam cooking with a bamboo steamer. And you can layer the food out. It's great for one person so that the bamboo steamer cooks naturally with steam, and then you can lace your little teapot with various ingredients that give it the aroma, the flavor, whatever you want, which is all natural. And then after the flavor factors are gone, you can drain that out and use that as a sauce that adds more impact to whatever food you want. Because people do not know how to cook anymore.
Yeah,
they really do not
amen
know
to
how
that.
to do it.
You're absolutely
and
right.
Unfortunately, the single person, and there's many of them, are caught with that issue of time and cooking and getting their food. So preparation, going through a cooking process, and then holding some of that food later for reuse is important.
And I'd like to thank you for that comment because, Yeah, there's so many intricate things that involve this topic, and I value your comments because that is a very important aspect. And like you said, most people don't want to take the time to prepare things that way. And to also kind of augment on what you were saying, if you sit patiently and really enjoy your food prepared the right way, and really chew it and take time to let your amylase, your enzymes in your mouth to dissolve that, people are amazed at how flavorful properly prepared food actually is. So thank you for that.
Hello, over here, I'm sorry. You stress the importance of exercise, and I mean that's stressed everywhere, and yet the health companies are now denying or cutting back on their silver sneaker programs, which are very preventative.
Right.
And is there anything that we can do, to encourage them to continue something that inexpensive that really helps cut down on later costs?
Thank you for the question. And the answer, if this is an answer at all, would be I understand your struggles, and we see it in the office quite frequently. I mean, lobby Congress. I mean, it sometimes falls on deaf ears. In my opinion, this has. I mean, look what they're doing with the GMO issue. But I think if enough people, really call and flood the phones, things will start to change in a good way, hopefully.
Something I've been doing lately is make sure that I get all my food that I can at a local farmer's market, and I always ask, has it been chemically, genetically treated? It may be a little more expensive, but it helps.
Thank you for that. Yes, and that's one of the things that folks often complain about is that, and even when we look at the history of the public school food, they complain that this food that we're eating is so expensive to eat well, and then the cheap stuff is cheap. You can go to McDonald's and get a 99-cent cheeseburger, or you can pay $3 for a banana. I mean, it's nuts. So, yeah.
Okay, it's here.
Sorry. Hi. Okay.
Hypothetically, and I know some farmers, and if you are a farmer who had been growing some GMOs and wish to change, how long would it take, or is the stuff in the soil, and what can they do about it? Because
that's an excellent question. The issue of the soil is something that's, and again, I'm not an expert on the agricultural issues with farming. I know I alluded to my grandfather's practices a little bit, but candidly, I don't know enough about how to replete the soil with nutrient-dense stuff other than what our forefathers did, which is cow manure. Well, right, exactly, and that's why I can't stress enough that all I'm asking for is more thorough research. The aspect of mass food production is, if I had a choice between not eating and eating GMOs, well, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to eat the GMOs because I don't want to starve to death. So, when we're looking at populations who, and that's what detractors will say. Well, hey, listen, we're feeding the world here. So all I'm asking for is labeling and more safety studies to be done. With your question regarding, how long do the GMOs contaminate? That's still up in the air, and that's another point that I was trying to make is that we really don't know.
I've heard that there are supplement products which attempt to combine in a capsule all kinds of good plant nutrients.
Yes.
Can you comment on the value of these things?
Thank you. That's another great question. Boy, you guys are chock full of good questions today. We actually use a site called consumerlabs.com. We have to pay for it, but it's a third-party site, a third-party entity that actually does just that. You know, like I said before, you know, patients will come into my office and I'll be flooded with, I mean, let's face it, for me to know all the supplements that are out there, it's impossible. There's hundreds of thousands of different supplements. And one of the nice things that we have at our disposal is this Consumer Labs, where we can type in the product name and what it is, and they will give us a printout of how, one, does it have what it says it's supposed to have in it, and two, contaminants and stuff. And we catch things all the time that were like recalled for having, you know, lead and all kinds of crazy things that you might say, well, wait a minute, I bought this online from a reputable distributor or whatnot, and we say, hey, listen, let us check it first. So I think it would behoove all of us to really, you know, there's a saying, a Russian saying, doverii no proverii, trust but verify. And I think if we really do some homework before we purchase anything to look and see that that's not contaminated and it is what it says it is, then we all serve ourselves better. And you don't have to be a physician to go onto this site. I think it's like a $45 fee for a year, and you can have that at your disposal. And it's a really great site, consumerlabs.com.
My kids are all vegetarians, so they pretty much live on tofu and dairy. Lately, I've been hearing so much about how dairy causes inflammation and is carcinogenic. Do you have an opinion about that? And do children also need to be concerned? And in terms of the tofu, would you include edamame in that, or because it's not processed, it's a little safer?
You know, I'll be honest, I'm not an expert on that, on tofu. The thing I can speak to is, you know, with regard to vegans, vegetarians and vegans in particular, is that you want to be cautious of B12 depletion and certain nutrients we do get from meat, and you have to be very cautious with the B12, because B12 depletion significantly can cause certain neurological problems if you let it go too long. So I always tell my patients who are vegan or vegetarian, let me check your B12 level, and you'll have to supplement that way.
But in terms of the dairy, are you anti-dairy? I didn't see
I'm not.
it
I've heard
on the
that.
food pyramid.
No, yeah, thank you. I'm not anti-dairy. But that being said, you know, everyone's individual. You know, my son is lactose intolerant and actually had a frank milk allergy when he was younger. So I think you have to base it on the person, on the patient.
Just one more follow-up. Is there a reason why dairy was not on the food pyramid? Because when I grew up, we were told that drinking a glass of milk is like the best thing to do, and I didn't see it there at all.
Yes, there's some indication that can cause inflammation. So, but I mean, I drink milk all the time. So.
I recently read that grains contain phytocytins that inhibit the absorption of calcium, and I wondered if you thought that was correct. And then there's also been articles about that grains may not be so good for us. Would you care to comment on those two?
Yeah, you know, and I think it's a great question, and I'm not sold on the data on that, and I'm not an expert enough to comment on that. I don't think that eating grains in it of themselves are bad for you. I don't. I think everything in moderation, and I think that there's a role for healthy grains as long as they're not GMO. That's just my stance on it.
Okay, we'll do one more question.
I have a question about vitamin D Nutriture. I was wondering if you check your patients and what level you consider to be deficient, because there's a lot of really good information about vitamin D deficiency and its various effects on health, and I would like you to comment on that, please.
Yes, amen to that. Thank you for your question. Vitamin D deficiency is an epidemic in my neck of the woods, and yes, I do. That's part of our That's part of my basic lab workup, is getting a vitamin D level. There are vitamin D receptors on virtually every cell in the body. And so with regards to the levels, we shoot for the optimized 40 to 60 zone. And, you know, folks who have like, I just had a patient in the office last week with a level of 8. So that obligates you to at least 50,000 units a week to replete those levels. And then from there, you know, and this kind of speaks to the dairy product. You know, we get vitamin D and calcium and things, as you know, from dairy products. So that's why I'm kind of on the fence about this dairy thing. Obviously, if you can't tolerate it, obviously if you have immune problems, they're probably related to GMOs, that you probably don't, that may preclude you from having dairy. But in general, yes, great question, and yes, we do check, and it's very important for immune function, as we all know bone function, but immune function. There's even some studies that show a link to, you know, depression and things like this with low vitamin D. So excellent question. Thank you.
Everyone give Dr. Garrett Clark a warm round of applause.